All right. Welcome, everyone. I want to welcome you all who are here today joining us for our webinar on Cisco. Wanted to take a couple minutes to welcome you and thank Chris Gallus and Skip Merriman, your state directors. They've put this webinar together for you. I'm Gerald Morrow. I'll just be facilitating today, and we're going to be joined in a few moments by John Warling. He's the Cisco Program Director here at BPAA. Again, the BPAA, our mission is to improve your profitability, and John's job here is to be your extension of your staff, so to speak. When you have a problem or you have questions on your Cisco program, he's the go-to man. He's got that red phone on his desk with the hotline right to Cisco, and he can get you some answers and make sure that you've got the best program out there as far as your pricing and that you're on the right program. So I want to go ahead and welcome John. John, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Gerald, and good afternoon to all of you who are on the East Coast, and good morning to those of you in the Central Mountain and Pacific time zone. We're very happy that you joined us today. As Gerald said, I'm the program director here at the BPAA for the Cisco program. So I work directly on behalf of you, the membership. I am an employee of the BPAA. So anytime that there are issues or any of those types of things that come up with Cisco, I am your go-to guide. So on a daily basis, I deal with all of the issues, both positive and negative in the Cisco program. I deal with about 72 different Cisco companies around the country. In addition to myself, there is also a dedicated program director at Cisco, and also a directed program administrator at Cisco that I deal with also on a daily basis. So it's important for you to know that you're not out there alone in the world when it comes to determining what's the best avenue for you to travel on our Cisco program. I'm very happy to announce that we just signed the renewal, which will be effective next Monday, the 17th, of our Cisco contract. The focus for the renewal this year was to provide better benefits for our smaller centers. As you'll see as we go through the program here, we do have a 4-tiered margin schedule for those that are on contract pricing, and those smaller centers were really our focus in lowering those margins from where they were at the end of the contract to going forward with some better margins that will give you the opportunity to become more competitive within your marketplace.
Before we continue, John, a couple quick points. For those of you out there participating, if you would, there's a little hand icon. If you're currently on the Cisco program, just click that little icon and raise your hand. Let us know that you're on the program. If you're not, that's okay too. But if you are on the Cisco program, just click that little hand icon. It'll be over on the right-hand side of your screen. Raise your hand to let us know that you're on the Cisco program. Also, while you're doing that, I know John's going to have a lot of information for you. So feel free to type in questions in the question window. That's also over on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type in questions throughout the webinar, and we will get to those questions either immediately or as soon as we can during the webinar. So again, raise your hand if you're a Cisco user currently, and also if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. Type them in the chat window and we'll get to them as soon as possible during the webinar. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Gerald. Okay, we'll proceed with what I call partnering for profits, which is really the nuts and bolts of our program that we have on a daily basis with Cisco. We've been with Cisco for a number of years. They are our exclusive vendor for food service within the industry. To make it clear, we don't have any what we call dedicated products that we have available through Cisco. All the members of the BPAA that are participating in the Sysco program have the full inventory at each one of their Sysco operating companies, which I'll refer to as OPCOs. OPCOs is basically your local Sysco company. So you have freedom of choice of any item that is stocked within that particular operating company or OPCO. As we move forward, we'll talk about Smart Buy for just a moment. That's the division in the BPAA under which the Sysco program is dedicated. We have negotiated contracts with over 100 unique partners, which provide rebates and or pricing discounts for all of our members that are signed up for those programs. I do want to make it very clear going forward with any of our programs, whether it be Sysco, whether it be Pepsi, whether it be First Data, you are not automatically enrolled in those programs. There is a responsibility, obviously, on your part to sign up for those programs. So every Smart Buy program that we have, there is some type of a link which needs to be made between the center and the participating vendor, just so you know that. And again, we have over 100 unique partners that provide an awful lot of benefits for all of our members nationwide. We have credit card processing, insurance, ADP, Office Depot, Astro Carpet, York Heating and Air Conditioning, Pepsi, and of course Sysco. Now these are only just a few of our partners, but it gives you an idea that really what our goal is to provide a program for any business needs that our members may have. So if you can take a look at your operation and excluding your bowling equipment, pins, balls, lanes, lane oil, we typically have a program which will address the operation of your center that you need on a daily basis. The largest programs are our credit card processing, Pepsi, and of course, Sysco. Our BPAA Sysco food service program is comprised of two separate and distinct options for our membership. The first option is what we call rebate only, and the second option is what we call rebates along with contract pricing. Now, rebates with contract pricing, it does require a signed participation agreement by the member center with their local Sysco operating company. Now, we'll take these two program options in detail. And again, if you've got some questions, this is where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. Be sure to add those in the chat window as Gerald instructed a little bit earlier, and we'll address those when we get to the end of the webinar. The first option, as I mentioned, is our rebate-only program option. The members receive two types of rebates. We have manufacturing rebates, and then we have a Sysco performance allowance or SPA rebates. With the manufacturer's rebates, we have over 70 manufacturing partners which offer in excess of 10,000 rebated products across the country. I want to make it clear that not all 10,000 products, of course, are carried in each operating company, but they would typically represent anywhere between 2,500 to 3,500 different SKUs at any individual company, which will give you a large selection of rebated items in just about every category of grocery. In addition to that, we also have the Sysco Performance Allowance or SPA rebates. And these are the brand loyalty rebates that are paid on your purchases of Sysco branded products. And it's a sliding scale as to what the percentage actually is on a monthly basis. However, we are right at about 1.85% and have been there for some time. Actually, that percentage has gone up due to the renegotiation of the contract. So any purchase that you make of a Sysco branded product will carry a 1.85% rebate. Now, all of those rebates are monitored by the BPAA. The contracts that we have with our manufacturing partners are contracts between the BPAA and that individual partner. It's not a contract between Sysco, the BPAA, and the partner. In addition to that, the SPA or Sysco Performance Allowance rebates, again, that's a contract that we have an arrangement with Sysco. So all of those rebates flow through the BPAA. They are monitored on a quarterly basis Once we have your account number linked into the system, we can then see all of your purchases, and we can monitor all of the items that qualify for rebates. The rebates are paid by the BPAA on a quarterly basis, and the checks are made out to the member center and are mailed directly to the mailing address we have for that member center. It's important to know that these are not rebates that are paid as a percentage of your purchases, particularly with the manufacturer. They're rebates that are paid from the manufacturer on individual products. Under the rebate only option, the accounts are classified as street accounts. And what that means is that your marketing associate or sales rep, they call them marketing associates at Sysco, those marketing associates or MAs are in charge of your pricing. So on any given day, they are assigning a particular margin to the items that you're purchasing over what we call an adjusted sales cost. And we'll get into a little bit more of that in specifics here as we go through the presentation. But keep in mind, we have two different types of accounts, a street account, and then we're going to have a contract pricing account. Oftentimes I get questions on the rebates. What products carry rebates? How many rebates can I accumulate? On the BPAA Food Service website, we have a complete listing which is updated on a very, very regular basis because we have manufacturing partners coming into the program all the time. So it's really a living document, if you will, as to which items are carried on the rebate program. But in order to access BPAAfoodservice.com, you will need a username and a password because there will be a login box for you to activate before you can get in to see the manufacturing partners. Your username is your member number, and your password, very simple, is BPAA. And once you enter that site, you'll be able to see the manufacturing partners that we have. And then to the right of that manufacturer's logo, there will also be their website, but there will also be a link where you can directly view the rebates that are available to you. And that spreadsheet will show you the item number. It'll show you the unit of measure, whether it be pounds or cases that the rebate is paid upon. It'll also show you the item description, pack size, etc. So you'll have all of the information there available to you. Again, be cautioned, we've got over 10,000 items on that rebate program, and not all of them are carried at each individual OPCO. But again, that's where your MA or sales rep can begin to kind of whittle down which items are carried in any particular geographic location of Sysco. And as we look at our rebates, we always want to obviously identify our manufacturing partners. And as you can see from the listing of logos that we have here, and this is only a partial list, but we do participate in the program with all the major manufacturers around the country: McCain's, Ventura Highliner Foods, Heinz, Tyson, Land O'Lakes, Equal, Breakbush, Lenova, Nestle, Sara Lee. So you can see that they aren't just small manufacturers that say, well, we'll give the bowling proprietors a little break on their pricing. What this really is the premier brands that are carried throughout the country and the ones that we recognize the most. The second option that we have for you is rebates with contract pricing. Important to remember that it does require a signed participation agreement. Now, this is an agreement between the bowling proprietor, this center, and the local Sysco operating company, which is the one who has to make the actual ties to your account to be sure that you are on the contract pricing side of the program. Members receive both manufacturer and SPA rebates. That does not change. But what does change is that your pricing is based upon a 4-tier margin schedule. If you'll recall, as I did mention earlier, the rebate only side of the program is controlled price-wise by your MA or sales rep. This is a completely different program. If you think of two silos, one right next to another, you're going to have a rebate only, you're going to have contract pricing one in each silo. They are two completely different, divisions within the Sysco sales department. So when we look at rebate only, that's handled by the Vice President of Sales. When we go into contract pricing, that is handled by a program director for corporate multi-unit accounts. So we really have two distinct programs within our contract, but also within the actual Sysco structure. So it's important to keep that in mind. The margins that we talk about are determined by your average drop size, and we'll get into that a little bit here very closely. Margins are calculated on Sysco's landed cost, which is the cost of product plus the cost of freight. This is different than on the rebate program option, because on the rebate program option, the cost factor that the margins are added to by the sales rep are what we call inflated sales figures, or sales cost, excuse me, or a loaded sales cost. So there are there are numbers in there that cover their warehousing, cover payroll, cover marketing, all of those types of things when they have that adjusted sales cost versus a landed cost. So the landed cost, again, is the cost of product plus the cost of freight to ship it to your local Sysco operating company. If an account is serviced by an MA, there is an additional 1.5% upcharge added to the margin. So in other words, you have the option of a sales rep, an MA, or you can do all of your ordering online. Under contract pricing, again, 1.5% upcharge is added to the margin for the services of an MA. Contract pricing accounts, again, are classified as corporate multi-unit national accounts. And as we look at our tiered margin schedule, I'm going to give you some differences between what we were at in the last contract versus the new contract coming up. If we look at frozen, canned and dry, meats, poultry, paper, and dairy, on a national basis in our program, those categories represent 90% of the spend nationally of our centers. So the effort was made by Amy on her part to reduce the margins that we look at for smaller centers. So if we look across the top, we look at Tier 1, which is less than $800, Tier 2, which is $801 to $1,200, Tier 3, $1,201 to $1,700, and Tier 4, above $1,700. Now these are what we refer to as average drop sizes. And by an average drop size, we mean if we take, let's say, an example of a period over a quarter, they will average what that drop size is, and you will fall into one of the four tiers. Now, in the negotiations for your top 90% of the spend, frozen, canned, and dry, meats, poultry, paper, and dairy, the Tier 1 margin was reduced from 14.5% to 13.5% on your high volume items, and from 14.5% to 14% on your lower volume items. That's in Tier 1. In Tier 2, the margins were reduced on your 90% of your spend, your high volume items, reduced from 12.5% to 12%. And on your low volume items, produce, seafood, janitorial, and sanitary, and equipment, it was reduced from 14.5% to 13.5%. So you can see, as I mentioned earlier, really what we're looking at is driving a better profit to the bottom line through reduced margins for our smaller centers that don't have the advantage of boosting their purchases by qualifying in those larger tiers. Okay, so it's important to note that as we move forward, we want to ask one other question when we go through these margin schedules, and that question is very, very simple. What do I have to do to build my average drop size? I work with centers on a daily basis to inform them on what are some of the easiest things you can do to increase your average drop size. Again, if we go back, if you take a look, if you can increase your average drop size from $750 to $1,200, you're going to save from 13.5% to 11%, you're going to save 2%, 2.5% on your margins, and that's on every single item that you purchase in those particular categories. If you can go from $800 plus to $1,700 and double that drop size, you're going to save from 12% to 8%, which is a 4% savings across the board. So when we look at answering that question, we really want to dig in real deep and take a look at your operation so that we can maximize your ability to increase that drop size, maximize the efficiency within your operations. And we have 3 ways of doing that or helping you do that, okay? The first thing is to consider bundling your orders. And that's probably the simplest thing to do. I know a lot of centers have a very limited amount of space for storage, but consider purchasing a used freezer for $500 and take a look at the savings that you can generate over a year's time. It doesn't take much to pay for that used freezer. So instead of ordering once per week, decrease your order frequency to every 10 days or every 2 weeks. Obviously, this practice will also assist in moving more efficient inventory management for you too in your kitchen. It'll keep your people a little bit more on their toes from the standpoint that they know that they can't have a lot of waste and that they need to make sure that those products last for a 2-week period. So once you get into that, as an example, if you can take a $900 average order, and again, let's go back to where we were before. If you can take a $900 average order, which would be tier 2, and you can order those goods every 2 weeks rather than every week, you're going to have an $1,800 average order, and you're going to save 12% down to 8% just by adjusting your order frequency. You'll save 4% right off the top. The second thing that we take a look at is increasing purchases from Sysco. I know a lot of you out there like to create spreadsheets and go out and make sure that you're getting the best deal, the best day from every single vendor that's out there. Some of you will work with 4 or 5 different vendors, spend a lot of time on the spreadsheet, spend a lot of time at looking at chasing dollars really to save pennies. So if there are items that you're currently buying from other vendors, convert those sales over to Sysco. Again, you increase that average order size, you double that average order size, you're going to save 4% right off the top. So some of those examples are fresh produce, seafood, paper goods, etc. I know a lot of you spend some time at Sam's and Costco, Restaurant Depot, etc. Consider what that time costs you to be out of your center. Consider what happens when you are out of your center. Not everybody is always as honest as we would like them to be. We know it happens. We know there's the center always operates much more efficiently when the owner and the managers are there. So consider that when you really look into what time you spend outside of your center. And the third example that we have is to convert your Pepsi bib purchases over to Sysco. This one gets a little bit tricky from time to time simply because we're dealing with Pepsi-owned bottlers and we're dealing with independent bottlers around the country, okay? And not every Sysco operating company carries every bag in the box that that Pepsi produces that are used in our centers. So we have to take a look at each individual case, each individual OPCO, and make sure that we're well represented in that OPCO and that you will be able to deal with the local bottler in moving those Pepsi purchases over to Sysco. But if you're buying $200 or $300 a week in purchases from Pepsi, why not add that to your Sysco truck and increase your average order size and reduce your margins and save yourself some more money? In order to convert those purchases over to Sysco, there must be a signed Pepsi commissary agreement, and we can provide that agreement for you. All it is basically is a letter, and that letter just states the name of the operator, the center, which bag in the box items you're purchasing currently, and what the name of the specific Sysco operating company is that you would like to purchase from. It's a very simple 2-page document. That document is then filed with Sysco and filed with PepsiCo. Processing on those documents will typically take 8 to 10 weeks. They have to give the bottler a certain number of weeks of notice, and then it works itself through the system. But it's important that you take a look at that. You'll still be able to purchase your bottles and cans. You'll still be able to purchase whatever bibs are not available through your local Sysco company from your local bottler. Again, of course, you'll have to meet the minimums on your local bottler that he has, but there won't be any minimums from the standpoint of Sysco. You can order 1 bag in the box. You can order 10 bag in the box. It doesn't really make any difference. So it's another way to increase your average spend with Sysco. But again, keep in mind, it takes 8 to 10 weeks to get that put together. And that request can go through me. It can go through Charles Smoot, who's our Pepsi program manager, but we can get that handled for you and at least take a look at perhaps saving you some money in the long run. So again, to recap, those are the 3 ways to build your average drop size. Consider bundling your orders, increase your miscellaneous purchase from Sysco, and then also take a look at converting your Pepsi bag-in-the-box purchases over to Sysco. Additional contract benefits under the contract pricing option that you have. Again, these benefits are not available on the rebate-only program option. The first is deviated pricing. We have several of our manufacturers that do not offer rebates on particular items, but they do offer deviated pricing, which means that is a delivered price, discounted price to Sysco, and then your margin is added on top of that lesser price. Some of these, as an example, not all, this is not an exhaustive list by any means. Leon's Texas Cuisine, SCA Tissue, Nathan's Hot Dogs, Georgia Pacific and Dixie, Handguards, Dart, Pactiv, Heritage Bag. Those are all companies that we have a special relationship with that will offer us deviated pricing. In addition to the deviated pricing, we also have drop size incentives. Now, the drop size incentive is something when you consider bundling your orders, purchasing more products from Sysco, purchasing your Pepsi bibs from Sysco, that will increase your average order size. And if you take a look at increasing your average order size, you may qualify for drop size incentives. Now, these are discounts which are taken right at the point of delivery, so they are on your invoice. This is not an average of your orders or anything else. This is per order. So we have $1,500 to $1,749.99. You'll receive an off invoice credit of 0.5%. $1,750 to $1,999 is 0.75%. And if your orders are over $2,000, you're going to receive a 1% credit on the face of each individual invoice. Audit rights and price verifications. This is something that most other programs like we have with Sysco will not offer. If there are issues with pricing, we have the authority to go in and actually audit Sysco's books to make sure that you are getting your correct margin and that they are charging just cost of the product plus cost of freight. So as you can see, we really ensure a truly peace of mind pricing program as we go through our Sysco program. There really is a lot of protections that you have in there that you don't have out on the street, if you will. And it makes all the sense in the world for you to take a look at contract pricing and take a look at some assurances that you'll be awarded as you do so. I want to thank all of you for listening to us today, and appreciate the opportunity to answer any questions that you might have now that we've finished up the seminar.
John, that was a lot of information. I know coming out of the field, I've relied heavily on yourself and the team back here at BPAA to make sure we were getting the right pricing, because for a dumb redneck like me, it's a lot to gather, and I couldn't figure it all out. So it was great to have somebody that's an extension of my staff at the center to help me out as yourself. Got a question. Is there a contract for a specific time to buy Pepsi bibs from Sysco? Not quite sure on this question, do you have to buy it within a certain time frame? I'm trying to.
No, let me clarify just a little bit and mention a couple of other points on the Sysco purchasing from Sysco. Once the Pepsi commissary agreement is accepted and is in effect, you will receive a go live date when you can begin purchasing from Sysco. There really isn't any term on that. Once you're tied into that, you can purchase it anytime you want. One thing to be cautious of is that if you purchase bibs from Pepsi and you are not tied in with the commissary agreement, you do not receive national pricing, nor do we see the rebates, or excuse me, nor do we see the gallons that you're purchasing on the Pepsi reporting. So it's important to have that Pepsi commissary agreement in place. And if there's any question with that, Charles Smoot, Charles Smoot III, who is our Pepsi program manager, Charles can check on that for you and make sure that everything is tied in correctly. He can also see, or I can also see your pricing at Sysco to determine if you're getting the national pricing. So it is a process. It isn't something that just happens automatically. Again, we do need to tie it in correctly. Make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed before you begin ordering to be sure that you're getting credit for your purchases and you're on national pricing.
So again, just kind of following up with that question, so they have to be under the Pepsi contract, correct?
Correct.
And then they also have to have the commissary
correct
contract. So it's pretty much two documents they have to sign, but they're not tied into having to purchase a specific amount of Pepsi from Sysco.
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
So I hope that answers your question, Billy. It looks like we've got a couple of other questions. Before those, John, what's your email address? I know we're running a little long, so what's your email address? I see it up there on the screen just in case people have questions.
Located right at the bottom of the screen is john@bpaa.com, and my direct dial number is 817-385-8457.
So a few more questions before we run off. How do I know if I am linked to the contract pricing? So how do I know if I'm on the rebate only, if I'm on street pricing or contract pricing? Again, it's a lot there for me to take in. I may not know. So how would I find out? What's my first step?
First step and last step is to just email me. I can tell you if you are tied to rebate only. I can tell you immediately if you are tied to contract pricing. And then the next step, what I would always want to do is take a look at your average drop size, whether you're on rebates only or whether you're on contract pricing, and see, number one, if you're tied to the correct tier on contract pricing, or if you're on rebate only, I want to be sure that the contract pricing side of the program will benefit you, and then we can talk about how do we increase your average drop size and what's the best option for you from the standpoint of contract pricing or rebate. Typically, if you're up over $800 an average order, I would say contract pricing, hands down, okay? But as some of the smaller centers, we need to take a look at where we are, because under contract pricing, we have a $350 minimum, but there are delivery fees between $350 and $800. So we want to be sure that we're maximizing your savings if you're going to be paying delivery fees. So, but short answer, send me an email and we can take a look at it and get an answer for you very quickly as to how you're tied to the program. And if so, contract pricing as to what tier you're on, and verify for you if that is the correct tier.
Awesome. That's great to know. Another question, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this one. I'll toss it out there, but is there now a rebate on Dr. Pepper if you're buying it through Pepsi? Is that
there is a rebate now on Dr. Pepper. It's $2 per gallon, and that is new as of, I believe, July 1st. We announced that at Bowl Expo. So yes, there is. Any further questions on the rebates like that, I would refer you to Charles, and his email is charles@bpaa.com. BPAA.com if you've got any more specific questions on that. But yes, there is a new rebate for Pepsi.
Awesome. That's good to know. One thing, question that came in, uh, they were told if they move to contract pricing, they won't have a rep. Is that just kind of a myth, or are they getting bad information? See what if you can shed some light on that.
It's kind of tongue in cheek. It's a combination of everything. Mostly the rep trying to save their commission. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, we have two different silos, if you will, within Sysco, meaning we have territory sales or street sales, which is one sales division, and then we have corporate multi-unit account, which is national pricing, which is where our contract pricing would fall. Okay. Under rebate only, the rep sets your prices. The rep has access to the margins. The rep has access to the adjusted sales cost, or inflated sales cost, as I call them, loaded sales cost. He's responsible for charging you a competitive price, but then also making money himself based upon what he is charging you. When you move over to contract pricing, the rep is not eliminated, but again, as I mentioned, there is a 1.5% upcharge on your margin to have a rep call on you on a weekly basis. The reps will tell you, a lot of them will tell you, if you move to contract pricing, I'm not going to be your rep anymore. That's not the case. They can still remain your rep. The difference will be they're not making the commissions that they used to make on your account as a rebate account. They're making a much smaller commission, but they still receive credit for your cases and for your dollars for their bonus potential. Okay. So yes, they may say you're going to lose your rep, but that's totally not the case. If you choose to keep your rep, you can keep your rep. If you choose not to, you can go on online ordering, and you will be assigned an inside sales rep, which will be responsible for your account. They're not going to call on your account. They're not going to call you, but if you have issues, if you want to do product cuttings, if you want to do a business review, any of those types of things, they're your contact.
Awesome. Good to know, because I know there's a lot of, you hear this and you hear that, and sometimes we just want to figure out really what's going on. Couple more questions before we run. If I'm linked to the rebates now, can I move to contract pricing, or am I stuck only in the rebates? Can I move now, or is there an issue, or what's the process? What should I do?
No, you can move at any time between rebate only and contract pricing, or vice versa. The move to contract pricing, really all that's necessary is signing the participation agreement and making the election of whether you want to have a sales rep or not. In most cases, what we find, people who are moving over to contract pricing typically are ordering online. So if you've got a rep who's a good rep, you like that rep coming in once a week, et cetera, stay with your rep. Again, it's a slight upcharge, but if you're used to ordering online, you're not getting good service out of your rep anyway because you're ordering online, convert to contract pricing, stay with your online ordering, maximize your profits.
Good to know. One more here. It seems like I'm currently on the Sysco contract, and my pricing seems to be a little high compared to my volume that I'm purchasing. How do I determine what tier I should be on, or what should I do to make sure I'm on the right tier and my margins are correct?
Okay, again, as we go back, the determination of your pricing is based upon your average order size. If you're tied to contract pricing, we want to be sure that you're tied to the correct tier. So again, John at BPAA.com, just shoot me an email and I can check the tier. I also can check your average order size, make sure that you are tied to the correct tier. And if there's any issues, then we can, I'll certainly make a request for Sysco to make the adjustment if there is one that's necessary. I never adjust downward. I always adjust upward on your average order size. So if you've currently got a deal, great. If you need to get moved into another tier that's going to maximize your average drop size and make you more money, then we do that also. So, but again, there isn't any such thing as a bad question. I mean, it sometimes gets confusing. You want to be sure. There's a lot of information out there on the street. You want to be sure you're getting the correct information. That's what I'm here for, is to be your liaison through Sysco and to make sure that you're getting the best possible deal that you can based upon what you're purchasing through our program.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, John. Again, John's here. We'll be here anytime. All you got to do is email him at john@bpaa.com or give him a ring at 817-385-8457. Again, don't be afraid to call and ask. He'll take a look and be able to answer your questions. Like John said, there's no question that should be considered a dumb question, and trust me, I was in your shoes and it's tough to figure out, and he was able to explain it. And I know we went through a lot of information here and we went a few minutes long. One last chance. Anybody else have any questions before we wrap up? Doesn't look like I have any more questions. Again, we'd like to thank John Warling, your Sysco Program Manager here at BPAA. He's here to help you, an extension of your staff. Also like to thank Chris Gallus and Skip Merriman, your state directors, for putting this webinar together, again, to try to bring you some more information about the Smart Buy program and the Sysco program and all the details to help you add more to your bottom line and make your business more profitable. I'm Gerald Morrow. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.